just move on to the second paragraph. Second paragraph is very easy. They say distribution of key natural resources. Distribution of key natural resources across the world, including South Asia and Indian subcontinent. See, whenever something is given within the bracket, you have to give more emphasis to it. So the South Asian resources and Indian subcontinent resources has to be taken into consideration. Right, sir? The only thing is that I should understand what are the natural resources. And please do mind, they have given this word called as key natural resources. Right, sir? Now make it again simple, sir. Key natural resources. If at all, if I am just having an idea that what is this natural resources, sir? Natural resources. Flowchart way of preparing or almost segregating the preparation is always the better way to understand it. So natural resources, there are number of ways how exactly you can classify, differentiate natural resources. But the easiest one, right, sir? When talk about natural resources, assume sometimes I call this natural resource, or I would say this natural resources can be a mineral resource, or it can be an energy resource, right, sir? And when I talk about the minerals, again the best way of classifying, you can have something called as metallic minerals and you can have something called as non-metallic minerals. Make it very simple. So, see how exactly easy it looks like, metallic and non-metallic. It means you're not going to prepare all metallic and all non-metallic minerals. No. Word says key natural resources. So, the very important key metallic minerals, 3 or 4 non-metallic minerals should be sufficient for your preparation. Similar regard. When talk about energy resources, plenty of ways you can classify. Right. If at all, if I am just classifying the energy resources based on the reusable nature of it, I call them as what? Renewable and non-renewable. You call them as renewable, you call them as what? Non-renewable. If this is based on the technology what we use it to harness the energy, you call them as what? Conventional and non-conventional energy resources. What is conventional? The most popular, what exactly is the common technology, the very old technology what we are using is what? Conventional. Very new technology, the recent technology, or for that case even the old technology which has not penetrated, which has not become so common, you call them as what? Non-conventional energy resources. But please do mind, most of the time renewable energy and non-conventional energy resources, they overlap with each other. That doesn't mean that renewable is non-conventional energy resources. No, there is a greater degree of overlapping. Right, sir? So based on the technology based classification, you call them as what? Conventional and non-conventional energy resources. Based on the renewability, you call them as what? Or based on the reusability, you call them as what? Renewable and non-renewable. What is renewable? Before you exhaust this energy, if this energy is available to you, again you call them as what? Renewable. If the rate of exhaustion is more than the rate of replenishment, you call them as what? Non-renewable energy. Say for example, you are exhausting it, but this energy is not available to you, right? By the time you almost complete, it means almost exhausted, right, sir? You call them as what? Non-renewable energy, right, sir? So it is all about the reusability. Right, you call them as what? Renewable and non-renewable. Now today, if you ask me, given the situation, given the scenario, which energy has to be focused more? It is the demand of the time. You call them as what? Renewable energy. Right, sir? Now somewhere, what are the natural resources? Right, what exactly you have to focus? Somewhere, 3 to 4 in each and every segment should be very important, or should be sufficient. And this 3 to 4 will be almost determined by the demand of the time. Right, maybe just before you write the examination, what exactly is the current scenario, that will determine what exactly is this, the meaning of this word called as key. What are the different sources, resources you can bring it under this word called as key. Right, my dear friends. Right. So almost 1.5 paragraphs we have almost. Right, 1.5 paragraphs of syllabus we have decoded. Now going for the second part. It says factors responsible for the location of primary, secondary and tertiary sector industries in various parts of the world. Sometimes this topic we call them as what? Locational aspect or industrial location. Say for example, any industry is located, for example, it is located in some place. Always you have a geographical reason for it. Understanding the geographical reason and accordingly setting up an industry, this is what you call them as what? Locational industry or industrial location. Now, entrepreneur is an economically rational human being. Profit maximization is one of the primary objective of any entrepreneur. Now comes the question. If at all, if profit has to be maximized, the manufacturing cost has to be reduced. So somewhere, right, locational triangle or locational analysis helps us in locating a place where if at all if you are locating an industry in such a place, the manufacturing cost or the so-called the product cost will be minimal. Now comes the question. Only thing is that, as I said, right, factors responsible for the location. It means we are just talking about the locational aspect. Locational aspect of an industry. You call them as what? Industrial location. The second part, in general, it means industrial location. Industrial location. Now, when I talk about this industrial location, sir, any location of the industry primarily depends on two places, sir. Two locational aspect. If you ask me what are they, very primitive, very primitive. It may not be in reality, but somewhere to understand the concept. Two places are very, very important, sir. One, the place where exactly you get a raw material for the manufacturing of a product. Where you get a raw material. And the number two, of course, any processed manufactured goods has to be sold in the market. The place where you sell the goods, you call them as what? Market. So these are the two places which is very, very important for the locational aspect of an industry. The place where you get the raw material and of course where exactly you can sell your finished product, you call them as what? Market. Now comes the question, where exactly any industry has to be set up? Now comes the question, if you ask me what determines the cost of any product, generally we say two factors are there. Number one, manufacturing cost, and number two, it is transportation cost. So here, any entrepreneur has to almost focus in such a way that he has to minimize the transportation cost. Right, in that regard, I understand that any ordinary, or I would say any rational entrepreneur will set his industry or set up his industry anywhere in the line that is located between the place of the raw material and the place of the market. Right, but there are different types of raw materials. If you ask me that what are the different types of raw material, or I would say, one you call them as what? Weight gaining raw material. Number two, you call them as what? Weight losing raw material. Now, weight losing raw material is very practical. What is this weight losing raw material? Assume impure raw material. Sometimes you also call them as what? Impure raw material. Somewhere 100 kilograms, 100 kg of raw material, you're just taking it. You process it. The end product comes only for what? 10 kgs. But where gone this 90 kg? 90 kg is nothing but what? The impure material what you had with this raw material. Right. So what happens at every processing stage, right, the weight of the raw material or the weight of the product itself gets reduced. Right, sir? Now somewhere I understand it means it is weight losing kind of a raw material, and such type of industries we call them as what? Weight losing industries. Raw material also you can call them as weight losing. Industry also you can call them as what? Weight losing industries. Call them as what? Weight losing industry. And assumption says weight losing, any raw material or any industry uses this weight losing raw material, you call them as what? Weight losing industry. Finest examples are iron and steel manufacturing industries. That's the reason today by default when I say iron and steel factories in India, right, default name goes to what? Jharkhand. Why Jharkhand? Because this is the place where I have the raw materials. Iron ore is there, or any items where it means raw material is normally available in Jharkhand and adjoining Orissa, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh and so on. Right. If that is the case, I understand these type of industries, which is normally weight losing in nature, normally they are located very near to the place where you get a raw material. You process it, product becomes lighter, easy to transport, transportation cost becomes cheaper, product cost becomes cheaper, both are happy, entrepreneur and customer both are happy. As simple as this. Such industry, right, you call them as what? Raw material oriented industry. Somewhere, this weight losing industry, you call them as what? Raw material oriented industry. Oriented industry. Weight losing in nature. Raw material oriented. On the other hand, there is also one type of industry. You call them as what? Weight gaining industry. See, the weight gaining industry is more like a theoretical one. But what is very practical approach of it? Assemblage industries. Assume small components you collected from a different places. You start assembling it. This product becomes so huge. If it is becoming so huge or very large, it becomes very difficult to transport. So as the case, if you are very rational, if you are almost economically rational entrepreneur, I understand this weight gaining industry will be located where? Near the place of the market itself. So it becomes big, easy to transport, directly almost you sell it in the market. Such industries will be located very near to the market. You call them as what? Market oriented industry. Sometimes this market oriented industry is also called as what? Weight gaining industry. It is market oriented industry. Right, sir? So somewhere I understand, generally industries are two types. Weight gaining, weight losing. Depending upon the nature, where exactly this industry will be set up, this is what we'll be studying in the second part of this paragraph. You also have different types. One more type of industry is also there. You call them as what? Footloose industry, where almost it will be beating around all the locational aspect. Only thing is that this footloose industry needs good connectivity. Once connectivity is there, right, I understand anywhere this footloose industries can be set up. Normally, with high value means almost product, and if at all the size of the product is very less, it becomes an example of what? Footloose industries. So wherever the skilled labor is available, footloose industries can be set up. So it doesn't need the market access or raw material or market location may not play a very vital role in footloose industry. That is an exception. Right, sir? Now, coming to the paragraph again, understanding what exactly UPSC is trying to say. We know that industries is of two types, raw material oriented and market oriented. But here, UPSC says factors responsible for the location. So far we know factors responsible for location. What type of industry? It says what? Primary, secondary and tertiary sector industries. Now, comes a kind of a element of doubt. I can understand secondary industry. Industry itself is secondary. There are different sectors of economy. You call them as primary, secondary and tertiary. Now comes the question, what do you mean by primary? Primary means what? Agriculture. Secondary is manufacturing. Tertiary is service sector oriented industries. Now comes the question, yes, secondary sector industry I can understand. What is this primary sector industry? Are they talking about agriculture? Certainly not. Because explicitly they have mentioned the word called as industries. Now if that is the case, what do you mean by primary sector industry? This is what you call them as decoding. What is this primary? Yes, primary means what? Agriculture. It means any industry which is dependent on agricultural output or product, you call them as what? Primary sector industries. The best way of understanding this primary sector industry is nothing but what? Agro-based industries. They are nothing but agro-based industry. Any example? Maybe as you can think, right? Maybe assume that I am also reading your mind. Well said. Something like that. When I talk about cotton textile industries, jute textile industries, right? All these industries are what? Agro-based industries, where the input of this industry or the processing unit itself is that agricultural output. You call them as what? Primary sector industries. Now, so the very important few primary sector industries we have to read about, few manufacturing industries we have to talk about, and some of the service sector industries we have to talk about. Maybe 3 or 4 in a list, your preparation should be sufficient.